What's happening, guys? Hopefully you had a good weekend. Wife's birthday today, Patriots tonight, so I'm trying to get this thing out of the way before the game starts. So, welcome to all you guys that are new to the Sunday Scan. We do this every single Sunday, so pretty much go over what I'm watching for the week. Not necessarily everything that I'm going to trade tomorrow, because what happens is, sometimes these things take a day or two to kind of play out. So, typically, I look for charts that I have interest in for a potential bigger move in the next couple days or nearing some type of really big breakdown. And whether or not that happens tomorrow, we'll find out. But I am prepared for those particular moves. So sometimes if it doesn't happen tomorrow, it'll be back on Scan Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. Or one of the new features that we have in Investors Underground is we have real-time alerts, price alerts. So rather than using, and I know other brokers and systems have those, but I've never found one that I actually like, right? And sometimes they trigger on another screen, sometimes they text you, sometimes they do a bunch of different things. But we've been beta testing something that Max added for us, and so far it's been killer, because rather than have all these screens have a bunch of different names that I'm not necessarily ready to trade right away, but I don't want to miss when that trade comes. It's been awesome because I can just go through. All right, I want it if it's over 1150. I want it if it's under 1080. I want this one over 32, and if it breaks down under 31, then I'm interested. And now they're off radar. And if one of those two levels hits, I'll know. There's a little bit of a high a day, low a day type triggers, VWAP triggers, a bunch of different things. So the good part about the way that we have done things, everything that we do is homegrown. So my programmer is actually a trader, and kind of came up through IU, and so he brings a lot of ideas, or takes my ideas, takes Cam's ideas, takes different members' ideas, and brings them to the next level, basically. That's a good idea, but this is a better way of doing it. And so he's always been making, we literally have a new feature every week. So that's one of the good parts about this. So anyway, I use that for some of these, things that are some of these names that I have on watch, just so that I don't need to watch every single name, because obviously you'd probably start to miss quite a few names. Last week was great. As I went over the last video, I was coming off a really, really big week, really, really big run, and typically that ends with some type of disaster. So fortunately, I didn't have any types of disasters. I'm trying to be very, very aware of where I'm at, trading well, resetting, refocusing. The only thing that I did get a little aggravated about with myself on Friday was, I got that Amazon trade off the open where I put on a little bit and I was anticipating a potential 1710, 1720 parabolic move. Ended up happening, and it went, I think, 1725, maybe a little bit higher, and ended up scaling in perfect time and unwound $20 a share. So here I am. I kind of get that feeling like, all right, I got a great read on this thing. So next one I'm going to nail too. So then I proceeded to get $5 back and $7 a share back and $5 a share back. So that's fine. It happens. But what is aggravating to me is I was teased with that first trade that I made, and rather than just waiting for that setup to happen, either the only edge for me is a parabolic move or some type of backside breakdown, some type of failed follow through momentum on the backside. And at any point during the day, you could have drawn a line off or under any of the prior supports, and it never broke. So I wasted my time just kind of waiting and waiting and waiting for this potential opportunity to scale into Amazon when XNet, PDD, SDC, I got all those, I nailed them all, but smaller size because I was focused on crap that wasn't paying me. And that's exactly what I talked about in Vegas. So this is the first time in a couple weeks where I had tenants or names that were not paying rent. And anytime that's the case, you got to just kick them out of your portfolio. and focus on other names, because that XNet, I mean, I was long at 288, 289s, 290s. I made it to about 330, which is fantastic trade, but had I actually put even a tenth of the concentration that I had on Amazon, I mean, I would have been probably scaling in and really nailing that trade, because that's right up my alley. But overall, it was still a good trade. Same thing, PDD. PDD did exactly what I was prepared for. The same thing that I said in the pre-market broadcast, in the scan. In a perfect world, we'd have some type of big gap up, parabolic move, and then unwind, pull back. And that's exactly what we got on PDD. And then last but not least, SDC, perfect backside move, which I can go over, and I will go over when I do scan. But perfect backside move, and the reason I nailed it, reason I didn't pre-exhaust myself, is because I waited for the backside of the move. The same thing I should have been doing for Amazon. But because I was focused on Amazon, I only traded relatively small on STC compared to what I typically would trade. So anyway, that was just the kind of recap from last week. Overall, really, really good action. The market is insane right now, and it's always good. Just like I said last week and the week before, I was ripping on all cylinders and firing on all cylinders, and I said don't get discouraged if you're not, because a lot of people find all those momentum names, the low floats, and all that kind of stuff it makes them nervous. It's hit or miss. They're not really familiar with it, and they find them nerve-wracking. So sometimes it's best to kind of push them off to the side and focus on what you know, and maybe that week is a little bit light trading for you, right? So on that same note, Tesla, I had an amazing call, but not an amazing trade, right? I was looking for a weak open towards the 290s in the morning on Friday, and a goal of a ramp straight to 320s. Now, I got a piece of it, but just because I made the call does not mean that I could trade it as well as the call was there. But somebody like P-Trader's in the room. A lot of you guys met him in Vegas, but for me, I'm a contra. Like, I go against trend a lot, kind of anticipating where it's gonna reverse and join. Not necessarily against trend, but I'd rather short. I'd rather be part of the pullback rather than join this, this breakout. Sometimes I feel like that move is too obvious. I felt like everybody knew the 290s was going to kind of consolidate and then ramp up towards 320s. And no matter how easy it was, in hindsight, you look back and all you had to do is stay along. I got in, I got out, and then I was waiting for a dip opportunity to get long again, and it just didn't happen. Ship sailed without me. And so with that said, P-Trader, like I said, that you met in Vegas at Traders for a Cause, I mean, he took the whole thing, and he got long. And me and him, whenever our ideas sync up, it's huge. And the thing that he's better at, though, is actually trading that obvious move. And, again, it's never easy. There was trying to hold that on some of those dips and whatnot, but look, I mean, he absolutely killed it. He did it with options. There was a couple 10x on the options. You get the 305s, 310s, and I mean the stock went to 325, 328, whatever it was. So, but it's always good to kind of learn from those guys that are better at different case scenarios than you. So. It's always, I like to watch him on that, and I like to watch him on IPOs, and I might have the same thesis and the same thought, but I'm just not going, as he said, hitting that button and just double in size, double size, and keep on getting super aggressive. So, but nice to see, and also nice to see a couple of the other guys in the room chime in. You have guys that don't say a peep for 3 months, and then days that we are down 500, 800 points, they're putting up, fib levels, pivot levels, all that kind of stuff. Or days like Amazon, they're putting out information related to where the open interest is on some particular levels that, MMs don't like to typically lose. And, it makes you kind of double think the trade that you took, and it probably saved me some, and it ended up being dead on. So that's it. Let's get into scan. XNet. XNET. So this one, like I said, it was great. We're familiar with this thing. Last time Bitcoin was super, super hot. It had a nice move, and as I think it was the first time. So 2 times that Bitcoin moved big. I think it was right around this day here, and then obviously it was always hot around here. But this name is like 60 million shares float, but it trades like it trades like SES, right? It trades like a million share float when it wants to. So the thing to keep in mind is the volume will suggest that you can trade, 10 times your normal size. And maybe you'd only trade 5,000 shares on this sometimes. But with this type of volume, you're comfortable with 25,000, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, whatever it may be. Everybody's different. I'm not trying to suggest that you should trade 50,000 shares of this thing, because the next thing I'm going to say is you have to be aware that when you're trading this increased size, because the liquidity is there, the volume is there, don't forget that it likes to trade thin, because all of a sudden you start to feel comfortable because the liquidity is there. You can buy and sell literally 50,000 shares without moving the market because it's so thick. But when they want it to go, they can gun it, and they have, and they do, and they will. And you've just got to be prepared for that, because if you're not comfortable with a 30 cent, 40 cent, 50 cent rip against you, emotions are going to become part of your trade very, very quickly. So you can kind of see you had, consolidation, and then this move was 320s all the way up to 340s, and then it went straight up to 4s. So you had about a 60 to 80 cent rip straight up without much of a pullback. And then the next thing to kind of consider here is you actually came back to this area of consolidation right over here. It went under VWAP, up, fail, base again, and back over VWAP. So you've got that dip under VWAP and then rip. So it's pretty much a trap. A lot of people use VWAP, right? I use VWAP all the time. So that's why I never just jump at something just because it cracks VWAP. I want to see it retest and fail, because a lot of times if it goes under and it comes back, retests and holds, then you have a day like we did over here. So this move tomorrow depends on Bitcoin, and let's just see. Bitcoin was it's right around 10. It's 9,700 or so right now. So it went up this weekend. So there is a good chance that this might gap, because everybody's excited about Bitcoin. Everybody already bashed this thing. Everybody already said the article that kind of started it up was there's no reason for it to be running. Sure, I agree. But the more people that think that, and the higher that it goes, the more people that are pretty much bent. So I don't want to try to make a full plan yet, because if I have too much of a bias, then I'm gonna miss out. If this thing has a 30 to 50 cent either gap down or up, then I'm going to probably be trading it reactively off the open. But if it doesn't, then I need to wait till 9:45, 10 a.m. and it's gonna be kind of a dabble into the trade type of situation, rather than take a one shot and hope for the best, because you can see they're working through whether or not they're working through shorts and squeezing them out and exiting into that end of the day, or if they're just churning out any other last sellers and stuff before they end up ripping this thing next week. So one thing to consider is you might have a T+2 situation on Tuesday into Wednesday, that area. So meaning it was super easy to borrow at pretty much all my brokers. So the ease of borrow for people causes a lot of brokers or clearing firms to fail in future days, and when they need to deliver it, if you didn't pay for that borrow, if you didn't get it delivered, then they're going to call it in. So that's when you end up getting a buy-in, and as that starts to happen and people start to kind of chase over one another, you get that nice big breakout. So we'll see what happens. The reason I love this is it's 60 million shares of volume. So as you guys know, liquidity is everything to me. I would take special note over here, look left. So you've got 522 is the prior high. After that, you've got another buck of room before it really runs into any issues. Probably 650 on the gap fill. Right over here back to November 13th. So just keep that in mind, that 520s definitely has some stuff from the last run. But again, 60 million shares, anything can happen. Be prepared. I will have a full game plan pre-market tomorrow on the microphone. RBZ, this one I think just caught a lot of shorts offhand. This thing never holds gains. And so, you know, I was there pre-market and I traded the flush. I also reshorted the pop, but you can see higher lows, higher lows, higher lows, starts to set up and then squeezes. So the fact that it was kind of holding, I went ahead and I finished the trade. I had zero position, started to squeeze out, pushed back, squeezed out, pushed back, and then all of a sudden we just go nuts. And this was 200,000, 274,000 and 100, basically 150,000 shares. So somebody was on the wrong side of that. I don't really think that this is going to go very far. They had done I think they had done a lot of delusion in the fives, if I recall correctly, back when it had squeezed out over here in this day. They ended up raising this day right over here, right around, I believe it was 5. So at any rate, this is the first day that it's had volume, the highest volume since that day. It's just trained shorts to short, you know, every pop for ages, and so it's that one time that people get a little bit too aggressive, trend holds, and then they get squeezed out. So I think they did a good job of squeezing everybody out. Higher the better. I'd be looking left to today. I don't necessarily think we're going to go to 240s, but 210s, 220s tomorrow. If it starts to ramp and fail, I'd be looking to fade any trend. And also, when you look at the daily chart in a little bit closer, you can kind of see, you know, we've got a lot of resistance, both this move on 3 million shares, this move on about 1 million. The next day was 2 million-ish. Those 2 days probably have some overhang. But again, this one had 14 million on Friday. So I always take that volume into consideration. Once it takes out prior volume bars, then, you know, put the brakes on. You don't want to get in front of that move because they pretty much rotated everybody out that wanted to sell. PTON. This one's, I think, November 5th or November 7th. Let's see. PTON earnings. I think it's the 7th or the 5th. Let me see if I can find it quick. November 5th. So there's risk there. There's 40% of this thing float. I think, you know, I've been trading this thing, as you guys know, and, you know, I was hopeful for some type of, you know, back to back of you know, $1 to $2 days. Past 2 days has been pretty good. You can see a buyer has been kind of soaking it up. Higher low, higher low, higher low. We talk about these wicks on tandem and textbook trading. So I'll be looking to join dips for an anticipation of red to green over the next couple days. And then post earnings, you know, hopefully we get some good action, but I could see this thing really ripping if it ends up holding a trend. PDD. This one's always tough. It's like, you know, it's almost into JD type territory or MOMO, where if you try to anticipate or get in front or anything, you're going to get ran over, both on the long and the short side. Anytime it's pulling back, if you try to find the bottom, don't bother. They always do way more pullback than you think. They always, you know, break out way more than you think. So this was a fantastic opportunity, like I talked about, and this is like one of my go-to type setups where you just had a straight, steady move the prior day, and then you had a fast gap up. This is just, I know it's totally different, but SUNW, if you guys saw that post that I put on Instagram on that trade when I shorted the morning on the fours, and then covered towards 315, 320s. Similar situation where that morning before, that day before, straight up, zero reason for any exits whatsoever. Zero reason, no dips, no nothing. Everybody's very long, very happy. And then the next morning it had gapped up on news, and they just, they sold into it and pulled back. So granted, that's a small cap. PDD, same kind of situation where steady, 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 no reason for any pullback, no reason for any profit taking, no reason for anything. And so then it starts to really, parabolic and speed up relative to prior price action the day before. And so my goal was always, the next whole or $half mark. So at any point when it started to kind of hang around and peak out, I wanted to be part of that and risk towards the next $half mark. So you see it went up to about 42s, pulled back, comes back up, it fails. It failed follow through momentum. Perfect setup. And then a nice $1.50 drop. So again, that trade we took in the room. However, it was a smaller trade for me because I was, blinders on. Like I said, you don't want blinders on, but I was, and unfortunately. And so I was just kind of dabbling into it versus scaling into this A+ setup. This is one of my best types of trades typically, and unfortunately, I fumbled it. VIPs, similar situation, another China name, another hot one. Higher the better. There's no reason to get in front of this thing, but we've got some great range on the daily. So, back to PDD real quick for tomorrow. I should probably tell you guys that. So, typically a situation like this, I'd be watching dips, and then if it starts to base over these 41s, 4110s, then we'll probably start to get back and retest towards the prior day's highs, typically. Otherwise, I'd just be looking for a morning ramp, 41, 4120, and then pull back towards this same level, 4070. So there might be 50 cents in there or something like that, which is fine. I mean, it's a great setup, something that I'm comfortable with trading until we start to get a bigger type move. But this is definitely one I want to start to watch and keep on the radar just because the range is increasing, just like TAL and JD in the past. This is very similar to JD type situation where it's stuck in this range, but if we break out of this range, we're going to have a huge move, a huge squeeze. If we were to break out of this range, we'd have a huge unwind. Similar to that, these things have been stuck in range for so long, VIPs anyway, but they're finally squeezing out, and we can get that extended move. So I don't want to get in front of things. Let's see, X is nothing I'm crazy excited about, but it's just every single day it's got such great volume and it offers a decent opportunity. So probably start watching it for gap up, gap downs, and reactive type trades. When the market starts to get a little shaky, this might be a go-to type of short for me, something like that. But we're nearing a big level on the daily chart again, this 12. It's been having a lot of trouble there. So any big day, any day that it starts to speed up relative to prior price action, just like PDD, I want to be there. So it's not a trade like I started talking during this Sunday scan. It's not something that I'm going to look for tomorrow, but I'm going to set my price levels that I'm interested in and go at it from there. Same thing with Flex. Not necessarily a super great setup that I love for a trade 100% for tomorrow. But I think it will be a good one to start in on a week open. And, usually I'll look for it to come back maybe. So if it closed at 1150, 1160s, I'd probably look for it to come back to this prior level of support. 1130s, consolidate, start to grind up. And if it starts to look like it's going to go red to green, then we've got room. We've got room for potential of 12s or so. But I don't, if it stays heavy 1130, 1140s, I'm not interested. I want it to kind of base at that 1150 level and prove that it wants to stay up higher. A lot of times you see these pull in and then they go to 1030, 1020, 1010, and you try to bounce it anyway, but it's just not a long trade. SDC, need to stay current on this thing. This is the one that I said I would go over again. Unlike Amazon, I waited. So, it was going up. Yeah, it looks good. Squeezes out, comes back up, comes down, failed follow through, and starts to break this prior support. So I actually did not put on my first short until about 1160. Then I scaled in 1150, 1140, and I covered into the flush. So higher the better. This thing might need to consolidate for a few days, but I think that it's just really a squeeze from, the hit piece was this day, unwound the next day. Everybody's been playing, puts and calls and everything, calling for it to go different ways on CNBC the last couple of days, and they've actually moved it a couple of the times. Actually, it's probably about the last week and a half, not necessarily the last couple of days, but finally started to kind of ramp back up and push. So, I basically look left, and you can kind of see this day right here, this day, and from Friday, we're probably at some resistance here, 1170. So I think that anything over 1170s is probably going to have a little bit of a trouble if it's basing over 1170s. So there's two ways to trade this. If it ramps up and it holds versus Friday highs, so higher the better. I want to see it go 1170s, 1180s, 1190s. Then I'd look for it to pull back to red. If it starts to base at 1170s, then we potentially could have a short-term base forming, right? Because it's going to start to consolidate over this prior resistance. So if that prior resistance starts to become a new base, a lot of times that's where you see a trend reversal start. So I just want to be cautious of that. So we'll see, but definitely keeping an eye on it. It's been a fantastic trader for us, so I don't want to lose sight of that. IPOA was, I guess it's not a SPAC name anymore because they did the merger or whatever the technical terms are. But I don't want to miss this opportunity. It's got a lot of volume, but I don't think that it is as thick as it appears. So kind of like an XNet situation where, you look at it and you see all this volume and you think, it can't be as thin as it is, and it is. Whereas this one, I think that similarly, there's a lot of volume here. I don't think it's actually that liquid. I think there's a lot of back and forth going on. And I just think that if they want to move it 12, 13, 14 real fast, they can. So lower the better. 1150s as long as they base. I'm going to be looking for potential dabble. If they do not, if it can't hold that level, off radar, set an alert for 12 some other time. But I definitely think that there's potential here. So I am watching it. I did get long on Friday, 1125s. I sold it before the open, but I definitely think that we could have some fun with this one. And even if it does gap up, it doesn't. I wouldn't take it off of radar just because it goes to 1220, 1250s. Look, if it pulls back at 1220s, I'm still thinking that we could get a couple bucks out of it if it starts to consolidate. So just be cautious. I think a lot of people will size in thinking, there's no reason for this to go based off the volume that they see. But I think at the end of the day, it's going to act a lot thinner than the volume suggests. Overstock, you know how much I love this one. So I got a little bit of a bid with the Bitcoin stuff, but keep in mind, everybody is bent on this thing. Everybody averaged down. So, I can't see this thing ramping up very much, but I hope that they do get some gaps going because that's the only way they're probably going to get a little bit of attention. And over 1220s, anything that gets going, I'll be looking for the backside. But I think that they're going to use this Bitcoin opportunity to unload again. And we'll see what happens, but this thing is totally broken. And, just at this point, everybody's probably sick of the way that it moves. And every time they're up, they end up losing 50%. Then they finally get back to break even. Then they lose 50%. So basically, in my opinion, they've gone through the ringer so many times that this is the time that anytime they're like, all right, if it gets back to here, I'm a seller. And I think that you're just always going to have pressure on it now. So that's just my thinking. AIMT was a trade from Scan the past 2 weeks. If 24 started to base, I really, really liked it. And so far, it's been straight up. A bunch of the news guys in the room have been calling out on the calls all week and last week. So that kind of was suggesting higher price action. So that one worked pretty well. HEPA, nothing really to talk about here, except that as it falls off people's radars, I think there's going to be a nice little play back down to 250, something like that. But it's also a reminder, BIMI, SES, and all these other NNMD or whatever the one was this week. Is it NMMD? I'm going to lose it. NNDM, got it. There we go. It's just a reminder to keep all these crap names on watch that ran past couple of weeks, because any PR is going to launch them. Not necessarily for a long trade, but a re-short opportunity. So they pretty much all come straight down. I'm not talking so much NNDM on that situation, but BIMI and also on SES, straight down. No reason for them to have run as much as they did, but it was a short squeeze. So at some point, people will get overly confident and patient with the short. The first time it ramps back up, they'll short again, and then it's just whether or not they want to play again or not. So I'm staying familiar with these so that if and when they come on radar, I can react that much quicker. Just a couple others. Twitter. I want to see and be familiar with the ranges. I think any flush out will be met with buying. I think any gap up will be met with selling. Just kind of like we saw the last couple days. CAT, I want to stay familiar. We're nearing some very big levels here. Week open can potentially go back and fill 142 gap over here. We might go retest towards the 145s. We might have another big gap up. Microsoft had some news after hours with Pentagon, 10 billion deal or whatnot. So we might still have some pretty crazy upside left in the market here. So I wouldn't take CAT and all these other big ones off radar. Same thing like Tesla, all those names. I want to just stay familiar with them, because the day that they pull back the $5 or $10, I just want to be there. Nike, same thing, higher the better. Potential for gap fill down to these 88 levels. So basically, the more times 92 fails, the more potential we get that unwind. So I want to take advantage of that. Last but not least, NLS. Nothing that's staring at me in the face that says it's buy, but what I like to notice is this prior top over here, we ran right up into it, hit a wall, but now we're consolidating. So we're actually holding higher lows. We're starting, there's a buyer here. Let's see, 168 and then 169 that day. So the low was higher the second day. And then as long as we stay over those 170 levels, this thing interests me for sure. And then I'd be looking for that potential 190 base, 2 base, and then maybe the move off to 250s and higher. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's my plans for the week ahead. I know there's a lot of charts there. Like I told you guys every other video, I'm not looking to trade 20 names tomorrow. I want to stick with 2 or 3 main stocks, but I want to be familiar with anything that I might trade, because if and when it hits my scan, I don't have to think. I can just react. And that alone will cause you to be a lot better. Just like seeing that BIMI and SES today, now you know what it was priced at. Now you know that BIMI pulled back on Friday. Now you know that it's pulled back X dollars and it hasn't bounced. Now you know that it could potentially still unwind and gap fill. You know all these different things. You might not be really staring at it, but if you see it, it helps you. Because when and if you see the PR, when and if you see a chat room on it, that the ones that alert low floaters, things like that, you can react that much faster. So that's it. Have a good night, and we'll see you in the room tomorrow.